Budget and Goals meeting to order. Ms. Tina, can you call the roll?
Mr. Jeff Cox,
Here.
Mr. Seals,
Here.
Mr. Frizell,
Here.
Mr. Lean.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, do we have any public comments?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, discussion and action on the final budget for the 24-25 fiscal school year. Assistant Business Manager, Ashley Amy.
Mr. Purvis, Mr. Cox, members of the board, I'm here to present to you the final operating budget of the Livingston Parish Public Schools for the 24-25 fiscal year. For this fiscal year, the original budget was adopted on August the 15th, 2024. The revised budget was adopted on February the 20th, 2025, and today we're here to present to you the final budget. The actual figures for 24-25 will be available after our annual audit is complete, and the numbers will be presented in the revised budget for 25-26. We're going to start with the general fund. If you'll turn to page 6, you'll see our projected revenues of $273 million. This overall number decreased slightly, but the majority of it is due to a loss of $1.6 million of MFP revenue, which stems from a decrease in our student enrollment. On page 7, you'll see our projected expenditures of $286 million. This leaves us with a projected deficit of $12.9 million. Our prior year surplus of $74 million, for a total net surplus of $61.8 million. I do want to tell you, though, that part of our deficit, our $12.9 million deficit, some of that will be recovered from our restricted reserves. About $5 million of our restricted reserves is going to be transferred over to cover some of that deficit. And if you turn to page 49, I can kind of explain to you those reserves that we'll be transferring. So the second item on that list is our first sales tax, and that's money that is collected to pay for salaries. So at the end of last year, our reserve was $4.3 million of that first sales tax. That money will be transferred to cover the attendance stipend that we gave in May. Some of the other items that are going to be used for the reserve are that E-rate. We had to increase our general fund by $250,000 for E-rate expenditures, so that'll come out of that item that's listed as E-rate. And then we also had to increase our general fund budget by $600,000 for career development. We have a reserve of $4.2 million. This is from funds that we've received in the past but are dedicated for these purposes. So if you turn to page 8.
So,
Oh,
Ms.
yep.
Amy, before you move forward, just to reiterate to make sure that we're all clear, it's like CDF, the E-rate, those items are restricted reserves, but the reason why they're listed there is because the CDF, for example, comes in our MFP, so it's sent, but it's restricted.
Right.
So it has to be moved back over to.
Right, and this is several years' worth of additional CDF money that we've received, and we earmark it every year and set it aside if all the funds aren't spent. This year, we've spent beyond our allocation for this year, so we'll dip into the reserves that we've had for that purpose.
But those reserves were sent to us for that specific purpose, but they're just been reserves. Okay, thank you.
How much, just from the MFP, how much do we not get back from MFP? We're having not as many students this year.
Our revenue is going to be decreased by $1.6 million.
Okay.
And that's based on the student population, which we did have a decrease of, what, a couple hundred or whatever?
Correct,
Right.
and that's the reason that we have that reduction.
Yep. All right, if you turn to page 8, it shows our expenditures by object. You'll see our salaries increased by about $400,000. This was due mostly to the differentiated compensation funds that were sent by the state. When we did our original and our revised budget, I based those numbers off of last year's differentiated compensation stipend, and this year we gave additional additional stipends because we received additional funding. So we gave the teacher effectiveness stipend, and then we gave an additional stipend for leadership positions. The remaining increases were just increases from the 13th check that we didn't realize earlier. The benefits increase was due mostly to the increase in the cost of state group health insurance. The increase took effect in January, but it wasn't fully reflected in the revised budget. We were able to offset that sum by the decrease in the rate of retirement. It was in effect for last July, but we were being conservative and didn't lower it originally as much. But now that we're at the end of the year, we can see that we can reduce that down. The other major increases in benefits was a budget increase for workman's comp due to claims paid in this last quarter, and an increase in severance pay for severances for people that retired at the end of the school year. If you turn the page, let's see, to page 50, other purchase services. We increased the budgeted amount for fleet insurance just due to an increase in the rates. And then we also increased, where it's paid to ESA other than LEA, that's other educational institutions within the state, and that was increased to pay for students' dual enrollment. We also received money from the state for that, for school course allocation, but we did spend more than we have in the past, so we increased that as well. Page 10, yes, I'm
Page
sorry.
10?
Yes.
I didn't see it on-
Fifty? Oh, I said category. Okay. All right, and category 60 is materials and supplies. The main category that increased there is that very first line. It increased by 500,000. That was all CDF increases. So that was just money that career development was spending. And like I said, that was coming out of their reserve that we had set aside. We also had some increases in technology-related supplies, and that was a combination of career development, E-rate, and the cost of installing cameras on the new buses. Category 17 increased slightly, and that was just an increase in the cost of T-buildings. And that's pretty much all the substantial increases that we saw in the general fund that increased that deficit.
Does anybody have any questions on general fund? No question? You can move to second sales tax.
All right. Second sales tax starts on page 51. These funds are generated by a parish-wide 1-cent sales tax and 20% of the parish-wide half-cent sales tax. These funds are allocated to each district on a per-pupil basis and are to be used for utilities and other needs deemed necessary. On page 52, you see revenues of $41.7 million. On page 54, we have expenditures of $39.9 million for a current year surplus of $1.8 million. We had a prior year surplus of $61.5 million for a total net surplus of $63.3 million. On page 55 is the crosstab that'll break it down by district. And then page 58 through 87 breaks it down by your individual districts.
All right, does anybody have any questions on second sales tax? Good? Ms. Ashley?
All right, page 89 starts the 7 mil maintenance fund. These funds are generated by a parish-wide 7 mil property tax. These funds are allocated to each district on a per-pupil basis and are used for maintenance and facilities of equipment. On page 89, you can see the projected revenues of $13.4 million. Of this revenue, it includes a transfer from second sales tax of $5.6 million to be able to cover the expenditures in this fund. On page 90, you can see the projected expenditures of $12.8 million. For a projected surplus of $605,000. We have a prior year surplus of $1.4 million for a net surplus of $2 million. Page 91 is your crosstab that breaks it down by district. Page 92 through 111 break it down by your individual districts.
Anybody have any questions on the 7 mil? Good?
Right.
All right, Ashley?
Page 113 starts the sinking fund. This is our debt service fund. This fund is for the proceeds and payments of debt service. We have a total projected revenues of $12.1 million, projected expenditures of $12.4 million, for a current year deficit of $283,000. We have a prior year surplus of $5.2 million, for a net surplus of $5 million. Page 114 is your crosstab to break it down by district. And then 115 through 125 will break it for your individual districts.
Any questions on the sinking fund? Good? Ashley?
All right, page 127 starts the construction fund. These funds are generated by a 5 mil property tax. These funds are allocated to each district on a per pupil basis and are to be used for construction. Our total expected revenues for the year are $13.9 million. Our projected expenditures are $33 million, for a total deficit for this year of $19.2 million. We had a prior year surplus of $36.4 million, for a current year surplus of $17 million. Page 129 is the crosstab to break it down by the district. And then 130 through 145 is your individual districts.
Have any questions on construction? Good?
All
Ashley?
right, page 147 starts school food service. We have projected revenues of $17.8 million. Projected expenditures on page 149 of $20.2 million, for a total net deficit for the year of $2.4 million. There's a prior year surplus of $10.6 million, for a net surplus of $8 million.
Anybody have any questions on school food
Summer,
service?
students will be given free lunch again this year. I think we said that there was some online stuff.
Yes, sir.
I think you answered that online possibly.
yes, sir.
What's our thoughts on the future as coming for school lunches and paying them?
So we renewed, based on last year's data, just because this year's, social, status was not as good as it was the prior year, so you could choose to renew, so we did that. And you can renew for, we'll have the ability to renew for 2 additional years, as long as there are no federal changes that change that from a 4-year renewal, have that option for 4 years, because that could change. But as of right now, we can renew off of that data for up to 4 years. So if it didn't improve next year or the following year, we would still use that original data that we qualified based on. So as long as that doesn't change, so we're right at, a little over 76%. So for every 100 students that go through the line, we get paid free, for 76 of those, and then the others, we get paid the pay rate, which is 2 to 3 cents, per meal. So, our percentage is actually pretty good this year with the reduction of students. That did affect the number some and not in our favor. So a lot of it will just depend on if, there's some, at a federal level, looking into if students are SNAP qualifications and things like that, because then that would reduce our numbers, or if they were to change, how long we can choose to renew our, based off of original data, that could, kind of change things. But as of right now, we would still have 2 additional years other than 25, 26 to renew off the data we're already working with. So,
Good, highly popular program.
yes, it is, it is. So we've continued to, kind of stay on top of that, but, it's just all, there's a lot of speculation and no answers at this point.
Well, it's one of those things where when people talk about the amount of tax, and I know we have a lot of taxes people pay, if they would do the calculations on how much they've been saving since I've been, was a principal years ago, that's a considerable savings for the families of Livingston Parish
Absolutely.
over the
And
years.
that would be based off of what we charged, 7 years ago. What you charged for a meal 7 years ago is not gonna be the same as what we would have to charge today.
What would that amount be, do we know,
It would be somewhere around $5 for
Okay.
lunch.
per day?
Per day.
Per student.
Times
So-
the whole amount of days kids are coming to
So if
school.
you're talking about,
It's $100 a month.
15, you're talking about $20, $25 a week, so that's $100 a month per student.
So literally, they'd be paying more than most people's property tax they pay for a year for just one student.
Absolutely.
And for 2 or more students, you're getting way more bang for your
And
buck.
that doesn't include breakfast, but just for lunch alone, you're talking about $100 a month. So that would be 900, 9 months, $900 a year.
Thank y'all for your work on that. Helps our people.
Ashley?
Next, we're going to move to the disaster fund on page 152. We're projecting revenues of $7 million. We have expenditures of $193,000. We had a prior year, a deficit of $6.6 million for a total net surplus of $168,000. Next, we're going to look at our federal funds on page 156. First is IDEA, and all of our federal and state funds are just in and out. So with IDEA, we have revenues and expenditures of $10.4 million. And the next page is Title I, revenues and expenditures of $8.7 million. Then our other special programs has revenues and expenditures of $1.5 million. Other federal NCLB funds, $3.8 million. And then the last of our ESSER money has revenues and expenditures of $3.2 million.
And so that's the thing that was mentioned the other night in the property tax meeting, I believe, that, we're gonna have an increase in property tax revenue, but we also have a decrease in COVID funding.
Oh, tremendously.
Yes.
So it's a timely increase in property tax revenue with the,
Yeah, you can look at our actual for 23-24. We had $10 million in ESSER funds in
Yeah.
23-24. So, yeah,
10 million, 50 million over the, or 51 million
Over
over
the
the
4 years.
4-year period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
impact on your budget, but then it's also a huge hole in your budget that you also have to work through, once that money's gone away, and that's kind of where we are. The money's no longer there.
Yeah.
So we're having to try to make sure that we work through those gaps.
I mean, you think about the, property taxes, all these, the 16 flood, the COVID events that created some property tax credits,
Yes.
that's affected everybody's revenue. They still provided the services. They got some disaster relief money, so all that kind of washed through. And now we're back to praying no more big events and getting more to a normalized budget in terms of revenue, and sourcing.
Right.
Exactly.
And one question I had, a follow-up on the numbers with the MFP. Any analysis regarding the debt decrease? Because I know we've had a moratorium that's kind of slowed down development and, a little bit in terms of number of folks coming in. I know we've had choice, that we have some folks moving a little bit. Any insight into the number, the impact on MFP, and whether you expect that to continue?
Well, it's hard to say if we expect it will continue. I think there's multiple variables here. One, Livingston Parish, we have a huge homeschool population.
Right.
And I think that population is growing. We're not alone in that, because it's growing in other districts as well. Even some of our neighboring districts, it's growing. So I think you have a large amount there. You have a few more choosing a 100% virtual program, or at least they try it. A lot of times they come back to us once they try it.
Right.
So you have that, and then you have the whole Gator program that, when we talk about the future and the unknown,
Yeah.
you've got the Gator program that's out there that, if money is allocated to it, for this particular session, I think it's 43 million that was allocated, and then they were hoping to get 93 million, I think it was. It wasn't allocated, only that 43 was, but if that 90 gets allocated, we are gonna, we would potentially see a decrease in enrollment. So there's just so much, I guess, to say it's
Moving parts
unstable right now
Yeah.
to know the exact factors, but, the truth is, public school enrollment across the state is down, which it has that trickles down to us.
Yeah.
And then when you think about it, because, we think about, okay, well, we have the number of students is down, so we should see a significant decrease in our expenditures. Well, that's not exactly true.
Right.
There's some truth, but it's not exactly
Right.
true, because when you're a district our size and you lose 150 to 200 kids, well, that's a large amount of money, but when those kids are spread, a few here at this school, a few here at this
Yeah, you don't
school,
really get the savings.
you don't see the savings that you think you would see, from not paying out as much. So
Right.
it's a little bit, hard to nail down one thing, but I think that's some of the factors that's involved there.
Yeah, and I think it's so prudent, from a financial standpoint, during this era, this coming off of these disaster funds, kind of being back on our own in terms of funding, and knowing that there's other parts moving, the DOE at the federal level, the local fund, MFP and its impact. It's good that we have the money we need, and we've lost that 3 million, but we've gained 4 to 6 million in property tax revenue. And it's good to have that as we head, because, it'll be over the next couple of years, we'll need to monitor those changes as we level set in absent that disaster relief money and on our own revenues.
Absolutely.
Good.
All right, our last section is our state funds. Page 163 is our 8G money. We just have one 8G grant now, that's modeled early childhood, it's $277,000. And then on the last page is our other state programs, and the majority of that is the LA4 program, and that's $2.9 million.
Did anybody else have any questions on the budget in general?
Yes, sir. I don't.
None at all? All right, do we have a motion to adopt the final budget for 24-25? Mr. Seal makes a motion, Mr. Link seconds it. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Motion carried. All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
Before I do, I want to thank the finance crew for putting it together and being available for questions.
Well, they always do a really good job for us and keep us out of trouble most of the time, too. We definitely appreciate it. All right, Mr. Seal makes a motion to adjourn, Mr. Fazell seconds it. All in favor say yes.